because the 7 rays are a very special part of Theosophical teaching, and we are very lucky to have Yiannis Pittis to speak to us tonight. He has been acquainted with esoteric practices since he was a child, and has been a teacher in both Tarot and the Kabbalah and allied disciplines for more than a decade. Yiannis is head of the Philalethia,
yes.
Philalethia Esoteric School, which has branches throughout Europe, and he is also a member of the Blavatsky Lodge of the Theosophical Society, which is the biggest lodge in England, which meets here on Thursday evenings here in this building in London. So, whether you can tackle the 7 rays in one evening or not, I don't know. I know you're a fast speaker. But anyway, you're going to have a go at tackling the 7 rays in one talk, which is a very brave thing to do. So I should be filled with anticipation, as I'm sure we all are. So, Yiannis, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that I do not disappoint you, because you cannot take your clapping back. It's like words. Once they are spoken, they cannot be retrieved. So as we already have heard, the 7 rays is a vast subject matter, and we will attempt to provide the outlines which will give us an insight and a sense about the means and ways of how we can familiarize ourselves with the content of the 7 rays. Now, essentially, throughout the ages of man, different teachers have endeavored to outline ways and means to self-realization, and to accelerate the process of that, they have given various essential practices and teachings which allow that to happen. Certainly, right from the beginning, knowledge of who we are, what we are, where we come from, where we are going, has been an attempt and has occupied the great minds of philosophers and sages. In their attempts, they have given to the world, they have outlined different systems of knowing the nature of man, such as the astrological system of the Chaldeans and the Egyptians, the Chinese system of giving you an animal. You might be a pig. I don't mean to be rude, but you might be a horse, you might be a dragon, you might be a rat, or any of these other different animals. And in studying the natures and types of the animal, then they would say one person is like that or like another type of an animal. Others have studied the ancient Greek philosophy of temperaments, the melancholic and the bilious and so on. And others have studied the Jungian philosophy of the elements. And so there are different systems that have been used to understand the personality and our nature. And in the last century, the great teachers have deemed it appropriate that they will impart to humanity yet another vehicle, another system of self-realization. And that system is the system of the 7 rays. It was Madame Blavatsky who first outlined into the world this particular teaching of the 7 rays. And subsequently, another of the great teachers whose duty was to give a new philosophy, a synthesizing philosophy to mankind that contains within it teachings for the aspirant, for the young student, for the disciple, for the initiate, and for masters as well, known as the Master DK, through using one of his students, and by her cooperation, known as Alice Bailey, she gave to the world a whole series of books which at first sight, when one opens one of them, is hit by the enormous content that is in each one of them. So you have to be very persistent to labor through those books, but if you do so, then you will be most rewarded, for the content in it surpasses most other books that certainly the speaker has come in contact with. Apart, of course, from those of Madame Blavatsky, such as the Cypriot Doctrine and Isis Unveiled and so on. So I am not endeavoring to advertise philosophy or under the Theosophical mantle or the Alice Bailey Lucis Trust mantle, but nevertheless, that is where the source this particular teaching to do with the 7 rays comes from, and we have to acknowledge the roots of the tree of life from which we draw our strength and from which we draw our teachings. So I do not claim to be the initiator of this particular system. I only claim to be a student of it like yourselves. So I will attempt to outline it in a way that will be appropriate and simple. And so without further ado, let us actually begin to outline the seventh rays. Their source really is from the three attributes of the one divine life. The three attributes of the one divine life are known as the energizing or invigorating principle, the cohesive or responsive principle, and the differentiating principle. These three principles, in other words, are also known as the will, consciousness or responsiveness, the love-wisdom element or attribute or aspect of the one life, and the third one is that of creative activity. Now, these three principles, these three energies, have also their correspondence and reflection in the form side of life, and the form side of life correspondence are that of rhythm, that of inertia, and that of activity. In the ancient Hindu language, they are known as the sattvas, the tamas, and the rajas. And so the combination of the three principles of life and the three correspondence in the form make the six aspects of the seven rays. And the relationship between these two trinities make the fourth ray, the fourth aspect of the ray. So we have these seven rays. The one that is referring to the first principle of the will, the one that refers to the second principle of the one life, that of cohesion, that which refers to the third principle of creative intelligence, the fourth that relates, as we said, the first trinity with the second trinity, and those other three that are more of the form side of life. Now, how are we going to begin to actually have an inroad into the understanding of the seven rays as a means of understanding our nature, our personality, our spirituality, our individuality? It is a very vast subject matter, as we have said, and we can only touch but the surface of it today. However, there will be enough practical insights that perhaps afterwards, through contemplation and a little bit of work, may give you a mirror in which to reflect and detect aspects of your own particular race. Because every human being is actually unfolding and is inclined towards one of these rays or towards another of these rays. There are basically seven major groups, seven major group souls which all humanity belongs to. And by learning about the rays, we will be able to sound the note of our own soul and thereby be able to attract other members of our own soul group and be attracted towards other members of our soul group and therefore be able to cooperate, assist, be helped, and move and accelerate our journey. So the purpose of studying the seven rays is not so that we have a lot of information and yet another system to dazzle people in parties with, as astrology has become. Astrology now, it's the current talk in the parties of society, whereas in the ancient times, astrology was one of the teachings of the greater mysteries, not the lesser mysteries, but the greater mysteries. And indeed now it has become a public opinion and accessible by everybody, but of course misunderstood and misused in some respects. Let us hope that the seven rays do not end up in the same way, but they remain as much more serious study for the student who truly wants to attain that inner spiritual union with himself. And so the first step that a student should aim to do is to collect as many examples of the law of seven, as another name for the seven rays is the law of seven. To collect as many examples of the law of seven as they can. In so doing, they put themselves in the frequency of the law of seven. And therefore, by understanding and bathing in the vibrations of the law of seven, so then it becomes easier for us to comprehend some of the more scientific and more delicate and detailed aspects of this particular law. And so, I'm sure it's easy for us to collect some of the seven examples. It is said in the esoteric philosophy that man has seven principles, that man has seven vehicles, that man has, and I mean by that woman as well, because I see lots of women and I don't wish to offend, but I'm talking of man as a generic term coming from the root of manas, which is the root word of Sanskrit, which means mind. And all humans have mind and manas, and therefore whether you're a man or a woman, you should not be offended when one uses the word man, because it's the short for manas, for mind, yes? But unfortunately, people have an association with it as the masculine gender or the feminine gender, and therefore confusion reigns in that respect. However, by collecting a few examples of the law of seven, by seeing that the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 notes of the diatonic scale, the 7 ancient planets of philosophy and astrology, the 7 principles of life, the 7 types of skin. You know that you have 7 layers to your skin. You have 7 layers to your aura. What other examples can you find? Can you say any examples of the law of 7? 7 days, wonderful. You see, it's so obvious. We might miss it. What else? The 7 chakras, yes, we have talked about them.
Waves tend to come in sets.
Wonderful. The 7 waves. Have you seen the film Papillon? Where he waited upon the rock for the 7th wave because he noticed that it was the bigger one? Yes, you can be educated by films, you know. You can allow yourself to be educated by everything in life. So that is the first step. The second step is to find out the different qualities that correspond with each one of the rays. And once you begin to know the different qualities and the different types and the motto and the various weaknesses and strengths of each one of the rays, then the third step is to actually reflect upon your own nature, upon your own character, and do a little bit of study on that and correspond it with the particular qualities of the rays, and then you will have better atmosphere in your mind, better conditions in your consciousness to actually attract and invoke the particular ray that your soul may be on. It is quite difficult for the student to find their ray. It's not as easy as people assume it to be, because one will have to have a connection to some degree with their own divine monad, meaning that divine spark of godhood immanent, the God immanent in man. One would have to have made some conscious connection with that, because it is from there that the permanent ray, the spiritual ray, which falls in one or other of these 7 rays, emanates. The spiritual soul has the same actual ray as that divine monad. But that spiritual soul incarnates and takes on personalities like an actor plays different roles. And therefore, the actor is the same, but the act that he plays, the theater role that he takes on board, or the cinema role that he takes, is different each time. But he remains the same actor, benefiting from the experience. And so the personality ray may change from one incarnation to another, but the soul ray actually remains the same. However, because it is tainted or colored by the personality, qualities, and weaknesses, it is very difficult to detect it, because it is veiled within the personality vibrations. And so the work has to be very subtle, and I will suggest various ways of inquiring. However, essentially it comes to inner contemplation, inner meditation, after you have done all the groundwork, as I will call it. The groundwork meaning collecting the different correspondence, the different qualities, reflecting upon your nature. Then it is necessary to put all those elements aside and withdraw inwardly to the very essence of your own being, to that inner light, to that inner spark of God immanence, and then from that, in silence, you might be able to have the revelation of your own ray. It has a particular note, and it has a particular name. To know the name of your own soul is to have great power, because then by vibrating, you can create wonderful things. And the 7 rays are the principles, is collectively the law that governs all involution and evolution. For there are 7 planes of matter, and there are 7 dimensions. And whether we talk microcosmically or macrocosmically, certainly understanding and learning the law of 7 will give us an insight into the whole universal life that perhaps scientists may have to research for many years and many lifetimes to find. So understanding the laws, it is like being in the hub, in the center of life. And then you are able to make comments, to have an insight about all the different subject matters without actually having to make a special study of each one of them. I have often given the analogy of the hub of the wheel, of a bicycle wheel, with the many spokes and the periphery, the wheel. And if you are on the outside, you're looking at all the different spokes, and you are actually seeing so many different subject matters. Life is like a labyrinth of many things to learn. It's all too much. But if we actually study the laws, then the laws are the heart and soul of all manifested life. Our microcosmic, i.e. our humanness, as well as the macrocosmos, i.e. the universe, the planet upon which we live, the solar system, and the solar whole logoic life. And therefore, the laws are really the root upon which all and everything is supported, by which all and everything in the universe maintains itself, and by which all and everything will fulfill its inherent potentiality, and therefore attain perfection, as Plato said it. So therefore, the 7 rays, what are the actual qualities of the first ray? The qualities of the first ray are that of strength, that of leadership, that of power, that of a relentless drive, certainly in the advanced or mature or ripe human being, because if you say an immature human being, they get upset. So you must say a ripe and unripe. You can't get upset if an apple is unripe, can you? So the same exists in human beings. Some human beings are more ripe than others. And therefore, when a human being has attained ripeness, then in him the first ray qualities might manifest as majesty. This very misunderstood quality of majesty and statesmanship. There are not many statesmen in the world today. We are lacking. Let us invoke the great ones to send us some very good, majestic beings to lead us into the next phase of humanity. Because we have a lot of pretenders to the throne, but not actually one who truly, by their own merit, will sit upon that throne and lead us because of his merit. Such beings have existed in the past, and the kind of type of the first ray will be the ruler, the king, the emperor. The kind of teacher will be one who will drive his students to learn rather than entice them, rather than allure them. He will drive them with his will. In history, there have been great ones who have perfectly exemplified the qualities of the first ray, such as Caesar, Alexander the Great, mythical figures such as the English king, Sir Arthur Pendragon, and his 12 knights of the Round Table, where they manifested the beauty of chivalry and knighthood, which now they are handed like confetti by the current queen, but without real awareness and understanding of what they mean. So such qualities as leadership, majesty, strength are valued by the person of the first ray, whether they be a man or a woman. Their motto will be, there is no religion higher than power, nor greater attainment than its use for the goodness of the world, for the goodness of the whole. And the ultimate goal of a first-rate human being is to attain omnipotence, the first attribute of the threefold nature of life. In the Christian terms, we know it as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father element is that which the first ray corresponds with. And so omnipotence, potency, is the essential quality of the first ray. And so some of the ways that will be used for a first ray human being to attain his goal will be really to drive himself relentlessly without sometimes, if he is not so ripe, taking account of other people's opinions, and he may brush them aside and not really take them into consideration. But there are also weaknesses of the first ray. And those weaknesses, when we are aware of them and reflect upon our nature, may also be a mirror reflector to give us an insight of whether we might be aligned or affiliated with the first ray of the seventh ray principles. And these weaknesses are the qualities of pride. So you may ask yourself, are you a proudful person? Certainly, the quality of stubbornness is another. The kind of quality that even when you are apparently defeated, you will not give up. It is the kind of quality that Churchill had. And certainly, he said, we shall fight them on the beaches, we shall fight them on the air, we shall fight them on the land, we shall never surrender. That is definitely an aspect of the first ray human being. And during peace, Churchill was not really interested very much in politics. He didn't do very much. But when it was the war, when it was needed, when his power, his quality was needed, most certainly he responded to it majestically. And he, of course, was an incarnation of some of the great pharaohs of the ancient Egypt and manifested the strengths and powers of that. Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Caesar were also the same entity, the same being, who from time to time come into the world and charge humanity in one direction or another to illuminate by the power of the will. And so a mature person, a ripe human being of the first ray, will be one who manifests authority without being authoritative. He will be admired and loved by others and seldom feared. But a human being of the first ray who might not be mature and ripe yet, he might be in the beginning stages of realizing this power. He might be a restless type of a human being. He might actually manifest a kind of a bully mentality. He is the type of person that may end up like a little dictator in school, and a bigger dictator if he happens to become a leader of a nation, such as Saddam Hussein or Ayatollah or any of this type, Genghis Khan, yes, and others like them, who from time to time take leadership of the world. So an unripe human being of the first ray will be one who truly is feared by others, but it is seldom loved. And so by reflecting on this particular ray, you might get a sense of whether the kind of qualities associated with it speak to your heart and mind. And so what will be the glamour of a person? Because each ray, if one has not perfected the qualities of that ray, they are subject to fall into the glamour or deception or illusion of that particular ray. And the glamour and illusion of the first ray human being is that of endeavoring to be a savior in the field of government, thinking of himself as he is the savior, he is the righteous savior of the people. And that might be the glamour that he falls under, and therefore believes his own apparent direct telephone line with God, and therefore he does not take kindly to opinions of others, yes? He would suffer, such a human being will suffer terribly if he is made subordinate to others, if he is exiled from the station which he had attained. And he will suffer greatly if his power has been actually withdrawn, if his office has been taken away, if he is a prime minister and his own people has actually pulled the carpet under him, then certainly he will not be very happy. Now, in presenting the qualities of an unripe first-ray person, I will tell you a little story. There was a young man, all romantic, probably of the second ray type, and rushing with his little minion. He saw a little spot, and a big car was trying to actually park there, but he whizzed through and parked into it. And he came out and gone to the window of the big car and said, "You have to be young, fast, and romantic to do this." The man in his big Rolls Royce accelerated, bang, pushed the Mini out of the way and parked. He opens the door and comes out, and he said, "You have to be powerful, old, and rich to do this, my son." So, the second ray qualities are those of philanthropy, unity, integrity, integrality, love, compassion, and the spirit of cooperativeness. Whereas a person of the first ray will deal with his adversaries by crushing them and by defeating them, the second ray person will endeavor to use cooperation to get them on his side, rather than have to deal with the confrontation element. So a second-ray person will promote the spirit of cooperation. The types of people that often gravitate towards the second ray are those who are sages, religious teachers, priests, healers, doctors, and on the other steps of the ladder, nurses, and generally people who manifest a sense of willingness to serve their kind, i.e. to serve humanity. So the ideal, the motto of the second ray human being will be, there is no religion higher than love, nor attainment greater than its expression in the unity of the one life. And therefore they will always promote the spirit of cooperativeness. But they also have weaknesses. And the weaknesses of the second ray are those of sensuality, libertiness. A young and unripe second ray person in the earlier stages will be open to loving everybody, but not only loving universally like the more ripe human being, but actually falling from one bed into another bed, like Hollywood wives films, things like that. So they tend to really be free with their love in that respect. People in history that have unveiled most beautifully the qualities and characteristics of the second ray are the great teachers such as Krishna, Christ, Buddha, and closer to our times, St. Francis of Assisi. In ancient Greece, Asclepius, the great healer, Hippocrates, the father of medicine. So all of these beings give us a way of reflecting upon what a second-ray person will manifest. As a teacher, the second-ray person will attract the interest of the students by his love for the subject matter and by the love for the learning capacity and the learning faculty that he awakens in the human being, in his student. He will not try to cram people with facts and figures and information, but he will endeavor to awaken in them the faculty of learning. He will not relentlessly drive them with his will as the first-ray person, but he will use encouragement and the cooperative spirit, and he will enthuse them in loving the subject matter and showing them ways and means by which it can be of use to them. So usefulness is an essential part of the interest of a second-ray person. The ways that he will use to win are, as we said, those of cooperation. He will prefer to make a deal that is actually cooperatively arrived at, that is negotiated, rather than enforced deal. You understand? If you are buying something, or if you are selling or buying a house, then he will do it in a way that is amicable. He prefers to have an amicable way of arriving at solutions rather than an enforced way of arriving at solutions. Certainly, a second-rate person has an inborn fervor for the unity of the one life, to recognize the light not only that shines in his eyes, but the light that shines through the eyes of every other. He will be the type of a human being that will see the ideal in the actual, instead of seeing the actual condition of a person's faults and condemning them for it. He will actually endeavor to see behind that appearance and the light that is present and focus his attention on that. That does not mean that he will not be aware of the weaknesses. And often people misunderstand the teachers. They think that they have deceived them because the teachers do not focus the attention on the student's weaknesses, and then the student thinks, you can't tell really that I'm such and such a person. But the teacher really does not want to power the weakness of the student. He wishes to empower the light in them. So he may, by divine providence, so to speak, deflect his eyes and not focus his attention upon that. Yeah? So the second-rate person certainly will be one who will bring the religious inspiration into the world. And that is why some of the great teachers who have brought some of the major religions to the world have been second-rate. The color that is associated with the second ray is golden. The color that is associated with the first ray is white. The jewels, the precious stones that are associated with the first ray are actually the diamond, and the second ray is the sapphire. The symbol of the first ray is actually the flail. You know the Egyptian flail? And the crook is the symbol of the second ray. The crook is that which encourages. Let me put it more in plain language. The iron fist is that of the first ray, and the velvet glove is that of the second ray. Yeah? And so we may also say that another symbol for the first ray might be the circle with a dot in the middle, which is the symbol of the sun. Yeah? The planet that is associated with it might be the Vulcan planet. You may not know Vulcan, but it is that planet whose outer corona or aura is known as our sun. The sun that we see, behind the sun, behind the corona, the outward appearance of the sun, there is this magnificent, all divine, logoic, planetary logos that is known as Vulcan. And so, let us now move on to the third ray. The qualities of the third ray are adaptability, versatility. They have a quality of grasping abstract ideas very easily. The quality of the third ray person is also being able to be a good tactician. He will play very good chess. He would be a person that in history, if we were to differentiate some generals, Patton was a first-rate general, whereas Montgomery was a third-rate general. A third-rate person will not go into battle unless he has taken care of all the logistics, made sure that all the planning is exact, and has inquired into all the various pros and cons, and therefore is one who is quite expert at analyzing things, but in seeing the broad pictures and the broad outlines. So it is more of an intellectual ray. It is, as we said, corresponding to the third attribute of the one life, which is that of creative intelligence. So the intelligent aspect of the human being will be the predominant faculty that pervades the third ray human being. And so the types of people in history who have manifested such qualities were such as Aristotle, Montgomery we have mentioned. Certainly some of the chess players, the current chess players of the world that are doing a very, very good game with the computers, they even beat the computers. They are excellent at tactical moves. The third-ray person's motto will be, there is no religion higher than truth, nor attainment greater than its comprehension. So comprehension is very important for the third-ray person. Now, if he is mature, then he will manifest intelligence as wise counsel for others, for the benefit of mankind. But if he is not so mature, then he might actually become a bookworm, interested in reading many things and having lots of information so that he can dazzle others and show how great intelligence he actually has. Certainly, an immature or an unripe human being of the third ray has enough intelligence to see what is wrong in the fragment, but not enough intelligence to see what is good in the whole. Whereas an ripe human being of the third ray is capable of seeing the goodness in the whole, being aware of the imperfection in the fragment, yet not unduly focusing on it, because he sees the whole picture and sees that it is only a temporary, a transient imperfection that will come to pass. So he does not crush it, he does not focus on it too unduly. And so the third ray is a ray of the creative intelligence. And a third ray human being, if we were to do it, to give you in a little story, I will tell you that there were three priests. One was a Hindu, probably of the first ray. Another was a Catholic, probably of the second ray. And another was a Jewish rabbi, probably of the third ray. And after they gave its sermon, the basket with all the donations was collected. The Hindu priest emptied the basket, put his hand in the middle, half on this side, half of that side. Said, this half for me, that half for God. The Catholic decided to actually count. One for me, one for God, one for me, one for God, one for me, one for God. The Jewish rabbi threw everything up in the air and said, what stays up is God's, what comes down is mine. So, with that I mean to say that the third ray person is very good with money. So, the type of people, the type of careers are bankers, economists, communicators, broadcasters, column writers, actual writers of books, columnists, because they criticize things, columnists, don't they? They like to criticize. And that is also a tendency, a weakness of a third-rate person, yes? To criticize and overanalyze often, and too unduly focus on the actual truth. So to find, as an example, if one is a third-rate person, you might ask yourself the question, do you often stress so much the truth where you actually cause pain to others because they must adhere to the truth? If that is the case, then there might be an element of the third-ray reflection in you. Whereas if you actually sometimes prefer to tell a little white lie so that you may be kind and not hurt another, then you might actually have more of a second-ray reflection or quality in yourself. And if, on the other hand, you love the truth and you love and allow others the freedom to arrive at the truth themselves and will not impose your will and your doctrine upon them, then probably, again, you have a second ray. Whereas a first ray person will drive you to the truth relentlessly, whether you like it or not. Yes? So, the color of the third ray, it's a color of yellow-greenish, yellow-green. The symbol of the third ray is that of a cup or a triangle, depending on whether you're talking about the advanced or the not-so-advanced symbology. The precious stone is probably amber. The fourth ray qualities are those of adaptability, those of harmony and beauty. A third ray person is versatile with his mind, but a fourth ray person is actually versatile with their emotions. A fourth ray person actually being in the middle of the 3 primary rays and the 3 secondary rays will have the capacity to emulate the qualities of any of the rays. And so therefore a fourth ray person might find it more difficult to actually appreciate what their ray might be, because they may find in them reflections of all the actual rays. They are very, very good at actually emulating one quality or another of the rays. Their motto is, there is no religion higher than beauty, nor attainment greater than its manifestation in the whole universe. A fourth ray person will appreciate the beauty of life, will inspire others with joy, the joy that elevates and beautifies the world. And certainly, in their weaknesses, they will display kind of moodiness and swings from one type of emotion to another. One minute they may be in their heights, and another minute they may be feeling very low and very moody. Yes? Their incessant quest is to find harmony, but they always get caught up in this conflict of polarity, because the fourth ray is the mediating quality of polarity. So the fourth ray person might be a very good mediator, to actually mediate between a husband and wife when they're actually arguing. Yes? So a fourth ray person also makes a very good artist. In the arts of the world, painting probably will be his choice of mode, but he probably will excel in music as well. Such artists as Leonardo da Vinci were able to actually manifest not only the quality of painting, but also, because the fourth ray is so adaptable, also the qualities of third-rate intelligence with all of these wonderful diagrams, and then the fifth ray, a capacity for science, because a lot of the actual science that Leonardo da Vinci gave to the world still form the foundations of a lot of the scientific discoveries of later on. So a fourth ray person will actually endeavor to attract and inspire through beauty his adversary to join him. Rather than fight him or use cooperation, he will try to, if you like, seduce him. So seduction is one of the qualities of the fourth ray person. Yeah? Vanity is one of the vices. They can actually be quite vain people. Whereas for the first ray person, pride is the vice par excellence, so to speak, and for the second ray is hate, and for the third ray is fear. For the fourth ray is that of vanity. And so let us move again to the fifth ray, because we have so much and it's already getting on for 7 o'clock. So as you can see, it is really quite a vast number, and I'm trying to talk quite fast to cover all the ground, but yes.
What's the color and symbol
for the fourth ray is green, yes. The symbol is that which has an upward pointed triangle and a downward pointed triangle, or the wavy line that is actually joined. It has one pointed upwards and one down. I will do it like this. So one of the symbols is that symbol, yes, and the other is that. So both of them, as you can see, they show the endeavor to find harmony between the apparent conflicting forces. So the glamour of a fourth ray person is always getting caught up in the polarity of things. So if you're always finding that the way you go towards things is you struggle towards them rather than actually go through them with the force of your will or with the enthusiasm of your loving energy or with your ability tactically to analyze, and what you are actually using to attain things is that of the fourth ray quality, where you struggle and try to work out with apparently opposing forces, then probably you have a fourth ray quality in yourself, yeah? The precious stone of the fourth ray is the emerald. Thank you. Yes, the emerald. The fifth ray qualities are those of detail, precision. They are those of the concrete mind. Concrete mind qualities are those of observation, attention, analysis, concentration. A fifth ray person has a scientific approach to life. He will use facts and figures and really rely upon science to convince him about the existence of God, rather than, or the non-existence of God. Rather than turn to theosophy or philosophy, he will turn to science for his conviction, yes? A fourth ray weaknesses are those which tend towards materiality. The glamour is really to allow themselves to become caught in the formal side of life, rather than go beyond it and appreciate the invisible aspects of life. They concentrate their attention and their minds to the external form side of life. And so materiality and materialism will be more of a weakness of the fifth ray person. Certainly fifth ray people in the past are such as St. Paul, Saul or St. Paul, and great intellectual minds such as Confucius, Newton, Einstein. Such beings have had certainly a fifth ray aspect in their whole constitution. The fifth ray person will use his concrete intelligence to analyze everything, weigh all the balances, and then decide what he is going to do. The fifth ray color, we said that is yellow, blue, is actually lime yellow. Lime yellow. The religion of a fifth ray will be more the Jewish religion and the Zoroastrian religion. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Whereas the second ray qualities love one another and love thy enemies. You see the difference, yes? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and love thy enemies. They are totally different. And so a vice of a fifth ray person is they don't suffer fools lightly. If you actually cross them, be aware. They will make sure that they give as good as they get. Yes? They will not allow it to pass lightly. So science is definitely the domain of a fifth ray person. The fifth ray corresponds and is in affiliation with the third ray. The first ray is in affiliation and correspondence with the seventh ray, and the second ray is in affiliation and correspondence with the sixth ray. So there is this correspondence and affiliations. And so we will find that some of the qualities and attributes of the first ray we might find also in a seventh ray person, and some of the qualities of a second ray we will find also in the sixth ray, and some of the qualities of a third ray we will find in a fifth ray person. Now the sixth ray person's qualities are a fiery enthusiasm. Fiery enthusiasm, loyalty, fervent devotion. He is the devotee, he is the religious person who worships personalities, worships the personality of God rather than the abstractness of principle of God. Yes? The sixth ray person will be one who, his tendency, if he's immature, could actually idolize too easily personalities and worship them. He might actually become fanatical. And so fanaticism in the world, and such religion as the Muslim religion that has a tendency to fanaticism, certainly will be a sixth ray religion. A sixth ray human being will be Jesus, of the most perfect qualities of a sixth ray were demonstrated by Jesus. Also, St. John of the Cross Saint Teresa, Saint Catherine who sacrificed herself for her religion. So martyrdom is certainly a quality of a sixth-ray person. If they're immature, they may actually recklessly sacrifice themselves when they are also having family to take care of and duties. And the person that you were talking about in one of our other meetings, where he threw himself in the river and nearly drowned to save a person when he had young children and a family to take care and so on, probably had a sixth-ray quality in themselves. So a sixth-ray quality demonstrates sacrifice, and therefore his motto will be that there is no religion higher than devotion and no attainment greater than the sacrifice of oneself for the ideal that one is devoted to. And so fervent enthusiasm is a beautiful quality of a sixth-ray person. The color of a sixth-ray is the rosy, fiery red, and the stone or the precious jewel is the ruby. And the symbol is a torch, a flaming torch. There is also another symbol of the hexagram or the six-pointed star. And there are, of course, many symbols. I'm only just giving a few correspondence to have some material with you to relate and inquire into the rays, yes? And now let us come to the seventh ray. The seventh ray is a ray that corresponds to the first. It has as qualities that of dignity. Its prime quality is to manifest order in one's personal life and also in the life of others. So a seventh-ray person will not like people who are very messy. And if their houses are all disorderly, a seventh-ray person will not even want to stay or to sit for a few minutes in a waiting room of a doctor if the waiting room is all messy and all papers thrown about and so on. And if he goes into a doctor's or a surgeon's surgery and finds all instruments everywhere thrown, he probably is likely to walk out straight away, even though he's in great pain. So a seventh-ray person likes precision and order. And so his greatest motto is that there is no religion higher than order and no attainment greater than the universal order that exists in life itself. A seventh-ray personalities are such as Wagner, who manifested in his operas great ceremonial kind of qualities. Mozart also had a seventh-ray quality. He also gave some very wonderful operas because the seventh-ray type of inclination tends towards ceremonial and ritual and practical. So the kind of people will be involved in that will be probably generals, military people, soldiers, gardeners, people who work and till the land, people who have an interest in the natural forces, occultists, magicians, people who go beyond the outer use of force. The glamour of the seventh-ray person, or the illusion, or the way he deceives himself, is to have an interest in the subterranean forces of his own subconscious, as well as the subterranean forces of nature itself. So he will be interested in using the sexual energy as an example. And in the pretense of spirituality, he may use, if he is immature, the sexual energy to attract beautiful women or handsome men, depending on whether he is a man or a woman. But there are certain other, in the more mature entity of the seventh ray, there are certain qualities of similarity with the first ray, a certain dignity, a certain attention to beauty. His art will be that of architecture and sculpture. And so the great architects of the world, the great sculptors of the world, and those who have also used art as a means of manifesting order and precision are also seven-ray persons. The color of the seventh ray is violet. The jewel of a seventh ray is amethyst, and the symbol of a seventh ray is the seven-pointed star, or the swastika, the svastika. Do not associate the svastika only with the Hitler way, because they only borrowed it from the ancient Tibetans, and it was not a symbol created by them. It was borrowed and actually misused. Of course, the svastika is also one of the symbols of Theosophy, is it not? Yeah. Drawn the other way around, absolutely. Having to do with the creative and uplifting spiral of energy, because the svastika is actually a cross, but a cross in motion. And when the powers are in motion in an uplifting way, then the svastikas the fingers of the svastika are pointing in one direction, clockwise, whereas they are pointing anti-clockwise if they are to do with the more negative and downward arc of movement of forces. And so, having outlined some of the correspondence of the seven rays, how much time do we have?
Well, if you're going to have a few questions, we ought to finish by 15:15.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We'll
Well,
close the meeting down completely by 15:30.
okay. Well, you see my predicament, that we haven't started yet.
You'll have to come back again, that's all. You'll have to give another lecture next term.
I've tried to rush through. I hope I haven't bored you with lots of facts and figures about it, but essentially there is so much to give and so much to impart, and there is so many intricate elements that give correspondence to illuminate our minds. What I would like to use is 5 minutes, and it's a big task to do it, try and do it in 5 minutes, and then I'll open to your questions, to give certain hints of what now you can do. The first thing is to ask yourself, what is really the underlying predominant quality by which I win things in life? Do I relentlessly drive myself towards accomplishing A or B task? Or do I inspire myself with a love for it, and therefore I manifest the labor of love, as it is called? Or do I seek the company of others so that I can actually dazzle them with lots of facts and truths and be attracted and therefore liked by them? We have to find the underlying, you ask yourself, what is the underlying real inclination in my life? And ask also the predominant positive quality and the predominant negative quality that you will have. That will give you one mirror reflection. Then you can correspond it with the positive and constructive or negative and destructive or weaknesses of the rays, and that will give you one insight of whether you are of the first, second, or third, or fourth ray, and so on. Another question you can ask is, if you have interest to overcome some of your weaknesses, and the very fact that you do have interest to overcome and to transmute and transform and really cleanse your personality from impurities and imperfections, it is a sign that you are maturing as a soul and want to take your own development in your own hands. Now, there are different methods that you might be inclined to use, and therefore a first-ray person will use what is known as the direct method to overcome his weaknesses. A second-ray person will use more the alternative ray, the alternative way of overcoming. And the third-ray person will use more the exhaustive way of overcoming. Now, if I were to give you in an analogy, I will say, if you were actually on one side of a river and you wanted to cross over, the first-ray person, regardless of whether the waters were rough or still, he will just plunge in it and swim right through to the other side, never giving up until he's on the other side. A second-ray person will look for some bridge or some actual shallow waters to walk across. Yes, or a bridge. A third-ray person, if he is immature, might wait until the waters dry out. Might wait forever. Whereas if he is more advanced, he might have the ingenuity to actually construct a vessel, get in the vessel and cross over. So you see, each ray has a particular predominant characteristic that will give a person the means by which to overcome. And so the other three rays of the corresponding, i.e. the 5th, 6th, and 7th, will also, because they have an affinity with the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, will take one or other of these methods. The second ray is that ray where a person will not ignore the weakness, will actually acknowledge this raw energy, this raw material, and instead of suppress it or indulge in it, he will actually redirect the force and draw the raw energies and the raw material and uplift them and express them in their higher alter ego. So he may actually manifest anger and then recognize it, and instead of indulge or condemn it in himself, the very force and the very power of that, he will redirect it and manifest it as compassion. Whereas a third-ray person might actually wait until this weakness dies out in himself. It is said in The Light of the Path, a very beautiful instructive book that was given by one of the teachers through one of their students, and it's in the Theosophical Library. It said that in the heart of every student, no matter what their ray is, lies a giant weed. And this giant weed must be found, must be discovered, and must be pulled out. Only the strong can pull this weed out and kill it. The weak must wait for its growth, its flourishing, and its death. And so, ignoring a negative quality, it's a third-ray attitude which hopes that by not feeding it, it will become exhausted, yes, and it will die out. Because if you feed something, it grows. If you don't feed it, it dies out. Whereas a second-ray person will say, no, 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 I don't want this quality to die out. I wanted to make it a cooperator. Do you follow me? The spirit of cooperation. I want to take this energy and actually re-educate and show it another higher way of manifesting. In the same way we have found means of harnessing the natural forces in our planet and use them, the raw materials, and created wonderful things, so a second-ray person will try to harness and use the cooperative aspects of those raw materials in his nature. And so there is a difference. Whereas a first-ray person will just nip it in the bud, so to speak. Will just pull it out, snap it, use his power and his will, and will never express it again. It is that kind of power about it. Yeah? Once you have investigated the underlined prime quality that drives you in your life, and its positive and negative aspects, and reflected it with the rays, that will give you one insight. Then another insight is to take the personality and put all the constructive qualities and all the destructive qualities in one piece of paper, draw a line, half of them on that side and half of them on that side, and then give them in terms of predominance in your character, a number 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is those that are frequent on the positive side. Number 2 are those which occasionally manifest. And number 3 are those that are rarely manifesting. And you do the same with the negative types. And then you also have a third bracket of the qualities that are absent in you. And so, the qualities that are absent in you will show you what qualities you need to actually manifest in your present-day personality. Because the present-day personality has a duty to discover what qualities it already has attained and place them in service to community, to humanity, and what qualities it is here to attain and to express and to realize, and those it is its duty to focus its attention to cultivate. Yes? God, time is pressing upon us. Are there any questions? Yes?
I don't know whether you were approaching it towards the end when you spoke about the absence of personality, of what we're absent in, but how do we detect the soul ray?
Well, the first ray, the soul ray actually, is more the underlying powerful force that drives you in your life. It is reflected. Of course it will be reflected in the personality. But the other characteristics. You see, there is a driving quality, there is an underlying quality, there is an underlying inclination through the personality. If you trace the facts and figures of your personality from today backwards to as early as you can remember, like you trace a video going backwards in a film, yes? And you make a note of what was the underlying winning ways for you. Some people use the charismatic allurement to win things. Others use their power and strength. Others use this cooperative spirit and getting everybody on their side and so on. So if you find your underlying inclination of that, that will give you a hint about your soul ray. But the other qualities that I mentioned, i.e. that you may have tolerance, or you may have enthusiasm, you may have anger, you may have general other qualities, these will give you more the kind of personality correspondence. You may even go more detailed and look for the mental qualities, and that will give you the mental ray, because each of the vehicles of the personality is also maybe vibrating under a different ray. And of course it becomes more complicated, and it requires a more scientific approach to realize it. But the more detailed you go into, the more accurate you will be in terms of realizing your ray. So if you detect your mental qualities, the constructive and the destructive ones, that will give you the mental ray. If you detect your emotional qualities, positive and negative, and then you reflect upon the 7 rays, that will give you your astral ray, your astral vehicle ray, or your emotional vehicle ray. And if you detect your physical qualities, the posture, yes? Is it a posture of you like to sit like this? Do you like to sit like this? Or do you like to sit like this? I mean, each one of them, you see, is a totally different posture. The way you walk. You know, do you walk like a peacock? Which will give more... Or do you walk very deliberately and, you know, when you walk in the street, people you come across, first-ray person will not actually move aside. You will have to move aside. And so, you see, there are many ways of approaching this subject matter. If you're going to buy a car, a first-ray person will already have made up his mind, and no salesman is going to sell him anything other than what he wants. He will be interested in what is under the bonnet, the power that is under the bonnet, and the degree of acceleration, and not necessarily how pretty it looks or not. Yes? Whereas a second-rate person might be more interested, are the brakes very good? Will it actually stop? Will it actually stop when I want, you know, I don't want to kill anybody? He will look at the instruments and see that they're working properly. And if they are, then, you know, he can also be persuaded. A third-rate person will actually turn up with a notebook if he's buying a second-hand car, and he will actually make a note of the little details of scratches and the little imperfections and all of this. We'll have a book called Glasses Guide, you know, to look at the different monies that are supposed to be for this type of year, for this kind of mileage, and so on. He will analyze all and everything, and in the end, when he makes a bid for the car, will have lots of facts and figures to back up why he's not willing to offer a penny more. Yes? Now, a fourth-rate person will like its color. And if it's brown, I don't want it. It doesn't matter that it's the best car. Even if it's a gift, but it's brown. You know, it doesn't look so good. It's not very comfortable, you know. Yes? A sixth-rate person will actually fall in love with the type of a car. You know, the Jaguar E-Type. And no matter whether you have the best other kind of car, he is looking for that one. And he might be quite fanatical about it. Yes? A seventh-rate person will not be interested in the price. He will want a car that manifests this status. And he manifests perfection in line, instrumentation, in everything. And certainly if the salesman trying to say, well, we've got this special deal, and you know, we can give you an excellent discount, and all the rest, he probably will walk out. He has no interest, however much money. He's probably willing to pay over the odds to get exactly the kind of car that he wants, yes? So you see, we can take anything in life and show the elements of the different rays. I hope that today I have given a sense, an outline, a taste for your taste buds, for your mental taste buds. Yes, and I have awakened them. Are there any other questions? Yes.
I'd like to ask about the name rays. Why rays rather than like 7 types? And there was something you said about qualities vibrating under rays. And ray is something.
Well, what is a ray? A ray is an emanation. And so the white light that is diffused in the whole universe, out of itself emanate 7 vibrations. These 7 vibrations, we call them the 7 colors of the rainbow. These are rays. A ray is an emanation, is an extension out, is a hypostasis of the source. The source is the white light. The source is life itself. And the source of the 7 rays is life itself. But this life manifests itself in these 7 vibrations. Like sound, which is the source of the 7 notes, manifests itself in accordance with the scale of the diatonic scale of the 7 notes. So we call them notes. The scale of the 7 diatonic scale. We have the chromatic scale of color, and we have the 7 rays because they are rays of living intelligence and life. And so they emanate out of the brilliant white light that has consciousness, intelligence, and energy within itself. And so it is called a ray for that purpose. And a ray is a symbol of that aspect of life that contains in itself consciousness, energy, and creativity. Yeah.
I just became confused right at the end when you were talking about people having, it sounded like different rays.
Yeah.
Ray
All right. Let me just explain that. That the rays, I said, are also the law of macrocosmic, i.e. the universe. They have to do with the actual creation of planets, solar systems. The whole universe is created and manifested in accordance with these 7 particular intelligences or rays. And in human terms, we talk of 7 types of people. And so we say types refer to human beings, yes? Because we human beings like to call ourselves A type or B type or C type and so on. So the word type refers to human beings, more so, yeah?
But does this mean each human type is somehow linked to one of the
Correct.
intelligences
Correct.
that
It is.
correspond to
Absolutely.
rays?
Yeah. So each human being or each group of human beings, of the 7 major groups of human beings, corresponds to one of these august, grand, divine intelligences, yes? So I know that it is not a complete philosophy on the rays, but it is impossible to impart it. Even if I talked 1 million words at a second, still you won't be able to encompass the whole science and art of the 7 rays. So I know that it may leave you thirsty for more, but then there are books written on them. You can do further study, and I'm sure there will be other talks and other lectures, and I'm very happy to talk more on them. But my wonderful helper here wants me to come to an end. Have we got time for one final question?
I think, well, all right, just a quick, that's a
Is
quick
it
one.
possible actually to work on those 7 rays equally parallel and make them absolutely supreme, let's say?
Yes. Every ray, as sub-rays, has the capacity and the potentiality to realize the qualities of all the rays. You see, God is omnipresent. Yes? So God the Father is also God the Son, and it's also God the Holy Spirit. But predominantly, it's manifesting the fatherly quality. And God the Son is also God the Father and also God the Holy Spirit. But predominantly is manifesting the attribute of the Son.
If we realizing ourselves each of those 7 qualities, and then just...
Yes, you can aim to actually cultivate the qualities, the virtuous qualities of all the rays. So you can say to yourself, right, I'm going to take my progressive and spiritualizing journey today and in this incarnation and look at these qualities and virtues of all the rays, and I'm going to endeavor to realize all of these qualities in myself in this present life. In which case, whatever ray your soul is, and whatever ray is your particular personality and the different vehicles of the personality are, which I mentioned, a way of appreciating them, you would actually be able, within them, in the way of those rays, to actualize the qualities of all the rays. So we are not limited to one or other. We can actualize in the sub-rays of each of the ray that we are, the qualities of all of them. Yeah? So it is a little bit more detailed in this respect, but it is possible to do it. So thank you very much.